Thanks for tuning in to the Pocket Lawyer Podcast, hosted by the Dixon firm in Atlanta, Georgia. Today's episode is about taking legal action against sexual assault and rape. My name is Renee Cooper, and I'm joined today by our special guest, Daniel Adamson, who will also be part of our 15-second shout out because he will be leading the topic of discussion for this entire podcast. So Daniel Adamson has been a lawyer with the Dixon firm for 3 years in October. So thanks for being on the show with us today.
Hey, Renee, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So this is quite a heavy topic, but it is very important because it is part of personal injury claims and personal injury law. First, a little bit of backstory. According to an 11 Alive article, in the city of Atlanta, 20% of rape cases were cleared exceptionally over the last 6 years. More than 200 suspects were never arrested or charged. And according to some Georgia County officials, victims may be uncooperative with authorities and many cases go unsolved or inactive. So these are very unnerving statistics. So from a legal perspective, is there a difference, and can you define the difference between sexual assault and rape?
Yeah, so the terms rape and sexual assault are often, interchangeably used in criminal and civil court, but there is a difference. OCGA section 16-6-1 covers rape, and OCGA 16-6-3 covers statutory rape. The main difference under Georgia law is rape occurs when a person has, quote unquote, carnal knowledge of a female forcibly against her will, or a female who is less than 10 years of age. And for those who maybe don't know what carnal knowledge is, that's the penetration of the female sex organ by the male sex organ. So those would be considered rapes under Georgia law, and sexual battery or sexual assault is a little different. It's when a person commits an offense where they make physical contact with another person's intimate body parts without that person's consent. Mm. Okay. So, and then aggravated sexual battery or assault is when a person intentionally penetrates a sex organ or anus of another person with a foreign object without that person's consent. So, those are the three different types.
Wow. It's very important to know how the law categorizes them, especially if you're looking to seek justice for any number of these things happening, because I'm sure that could affect the type of case that you even ask about if you were, say, a victim reaching out to a lawyer. What should a victim of any of these three types of cases do immediately after they know or have been a victim or assaulted?
First and foremost, these victims are going through a tremendous amount of emotional and physical trauma. And, we always hope that these perpetrators are going to be brought to justice. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. So, there are avenues through the civil system that may provide for victims that aren't able to receive justice through the criminal system. But first and foremost, they need to call the police. They need to try to get the authorities involved, give the police a description of the perpetrator and what happened, and, describe the events, even though it's going to be incredibly hard for the victim to relive that. The second thing they should do is seek medical treatment as soon as possible, either at a hospital or another urgent care type clinic, and to get a rape kit test done, not only to have a medical record of the incident, but just to get the victim as much treatment as he or she needs.
Thank you. How important is it to get legal advice as soon as it happens? And how does someone really know if they have a criminal or personal injury case?
Yeah, it's incredibly important to contact an attorney as soon as possible, for multiple reasons. But most importantly, to preserve evidence. That's the most important thing here. And also so that the attorney can, kind of serve as a barrier between the victim and, a company or whoever the at-fault party is. Sometimes you'll be able to bring a civil lawsuit against the person. Like you said, sometimes it's hard to tell if the person is going to have a civil claim. Depends on a lot of things regarding where the accident or where the incident happened. That's one thing that an attorney can help with is looking into the environment and the location, things like that, and determining whether the business owner, the property owner, whether they should have had better security or better lighting or better tools to deter, these horrific types of crimes. And that's the most important thing is a victim doesn't need to be dealing with that sort of thing. So it's incredibly important to call an attorney as soon as possible after you've done the things we talked about earlier. Call the police, seek medical treatment, and then step 3 should be call an attorney.
There's a lot of times where people hold on to this information for a very long time, and by the time they're ready to seek justice, it may be too late. So what is that time frame?
Generally, the time frame is a 2-year statute of limitations for these types of cases. So although it's very difficult for a victim to relive, these events, it's very important to get an attorney involved as soon as possible, not only to file the case within the statute of limitations, but to preserve evidence and get all the information and documents and things that are necessary for the victim.
Does publishing something on social media, either right after it happens or even years later, affect the way a lawyer can help them seek justice?
It could. I think the longer you wait, the more risk there is of negatively affecting the case. However, with many victims, it takes them a long time to come out and talk about it, and even sometimes to report it to the authorities, especially if it's someone they knew. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend everyone post on social media exactly, about what happened soon after the incident. I don't think that's necessary. But another resource is RAINN.org, RAINN.org. It has a bunch of laws about sexual violence. And if the victim does decide that they want to pursue justice, either criminally or through the civil system, they need to do that as soon as possible. Another thing is it's oftentimes a he said, she said type of situation, which I think relates to the article you mentioned earlier about the cases that are exceptionally cleared, quote unquote. It is unfortunate that it does happen a lot. And I've had it happen in one of my cases. And we were still able to get the young lady a very nice settlement where, they weren't able to actually criminally charge and arrest the perpetrator because it was a he said, she said thing. But the location where the incident happened, there were a lot of code violations and things that provided the opportunity for this perpetrator to commit the crime, which is how we were able to get the settlement.
That is a big part of a personal injury case that I think a lot of people know. You did mention a little bit earlier about how important it is to look at the surroundings, the businesses involved, or the location of where the case took place. What is the difference between a civil case and a criminal case?
The criminal system is really the police and the district attorney who are going to prosecute the criminal. The victim, oftentimes won't even have an attorney for that avenue. The difference with the civil cases, and which includes personal injury, what we do, the civil claims are more against an organization or a person, a company, a property owner. And those tend to deal with situations where there may have been a relationships, where the perpetrator was in a position of authority or, had prior incidents and his company didn't do a background check on him. So it turns into a negligent hiring claim, or a property owner, I touched on earlier, had a dangerous condition on the premises, lack of lighting, lack of security, things like that. Those are more of the civil avenue. I'm sure a lot of sexual assaults and rapes happen in a house or, in an environment where the only avenue for justice is the criminal system. That's why it's important to contact an attorney as soon as possible to kind of let you know whether there is a claim that exists. Unfortunately, sometimes there won't be, but if there's a claim for negligence, that's when the civil system is used and there's a claim for personal injury or what have you.
So all this has been incredibly useful information. And I know, again, this is a really heavy topic, but it is something that we have a lot of inquiries on our website, people who are looking at the blogs that we have published. Could you reference other cases that you've worked on where you had a beneficial outcome for victims so that while we hope this never happens to anybody in the future, people are aware of how a lawyer can assist and how important it is to at least reach out to the authorities and let someone know that they need help?
At the end of the day, it just takes a lot of bravery on the victim's part to put their story out there and really be vulnerable and open up, their personal experiences, which, is incredibly hard. The one thing to keep in mind is conversations with an attorney are confidential, and even consultations. So it's which are free most of the time, at least with our firm. So it can be one of those things where maybe the victim's under a lot of pressure and feels like they have nowhere to go, and sometimes it might be an outlet for them to where they feel like they maybe can't talk to anyone else, especially if it's a family member, a close friend, someone like that. But I haven't seen a case where the victim waited too long to say anything, or it's as long as you're within that 2-year time period from the date of the incident, then it's fine. Maybe the evidence won't be as preserved or as it could have been, but the main thing is for the victim to do it on his or her own time and when they're ready. And I've had a case where a young lady with a mental disability was sexually assaulted, and there were apartments that were vacant, abandoned, as well as other code violations that, she was just going to throw out the trash. And, we ended up getting her a settlement against the apartment complex. So, and like I mentioned earlier, that case was an exceptionally clear case where I think the perpetrator was essentially free to go. And at the end of the day, money isn't going to make anything go away necessarily. It's not going to change what happened, but it's the only thing we have to get compensation for these victims and to hold the property owners or companies accountable for their negligence.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you again, Daniel, for talking us through this topic for our podcast this month. I know it will help a lot of people to see their options. We actually will have on social media a list of the RAIN contact, as well as some other sexual assault options. You can find them right now on our blog, but we're going to make sure that along with this podcast, we do give some other resources too that will help. So thank you so much. And everyone online who's listening, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at dixonfirm.com to see some of those resources. You can join our email list for when we release the podcast every month. Also, we do have a chance to win a $50 restaurant gift card that we just give out because we love our fans and our followers and our clients who connect with us. So if you have a case, a referral, or a consultation request, click the link in our bio or description, or visit dixonfirm.com. Or you can call our shiny new phone number, which is 888-DIXON-11 or 888-349-6611. Thanks always for listening, and thank you again, Daniel, for being on with us. And stay safe.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.